I grew up in a small, forgotten town, the kind of place where people leave and never come back. It's all worn-out houses, rusted cars in driveways, and overgrown yards. The only thing anyone ever talked about with any excitement was the tunnel, a relic of the town's industrial past. It ran beneath the outskirts, a dark, narrow stretch of concrete that had long been abandoned when the factory above it closed decades ago. We all knew the stories about the tunnel. Some said it was haunted by workers who had died in an accident. Others said it was cursed, a place where people went missing. But to most of us kids, it was just a dare place to prove how brave you were. If you could walk all the way through it to the other side, you earned your badge of courage. I never did as a kid. I made excuses whenever my friends would challenge me. I'd laugh it off, pretend I didn't care, but deep down I was terrified of that place. I don't know why, but something about it always felt wrong to me. Even standing at the entrance, you could feel the cold air seeping out, like the tunnel was breathing, watching. Years passed, and I moved away, but eventually life brought me back to the old town. The sense of decay was worse than I remembered. The factory had crumbled into a ruin, and the town was practically dead. On a whim, or maybe out of boredom, I decided to face the tunnel again. I wasn't a kid anymore. I thought that maybe exploring would help me shake off some of the bad memories that clung to this place. It was early evening when I made my way to the entrance. The mouth of the tunnel gaped open, a black hole cut into the hillside, lined with graffiti and crumbling brick. The air that poured out of it was cool and damp, carrying the faint, metallic scent of rust and something else, something musty and unpleasant, like rot. I clicked on my flashlight, the beam slicing through the darkness. The walls of the tunnel were slick with moisture, and the ceiling was just low enough to make me feel like I needed to duck. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. At first, it was fine, quiet, but fine. My footsteps echoed off the walls, and I tried to focus on that sound, letting it calm me. There was no light except for the narrow beam of my flashlight, and after a while, even the entrance faded from view. The further I went, the more the air seemed to thicken, heavy with moisture, almost oppressive. About 100 yards in, I heard something. It was faint, barely audible over the sound of my own footsteps, but it was there, a soft, rhythmic tapping. I stopped and listened. It sounded like dripping water, but it was too steady, too deliberate. Tap, tap, tap. It seemed to be coming from deeper in the tunnel. I told myself it was nothing, just the tunnel playing tricks on me, like it had done to every kid who ever walked through it. I pressed on, but with every step the tapping grew louder, and now it wasn't just a noise. It was a feeling. The air seemed to pulse with it, in time with the sound. My heart began to race, and I couldn't help but feel like something was watching me, something that had been waiting in the dark for years. About halfway through, my flashlight flickered, just for a second, but it was enough to send a jolt of panic through me. I stopped, clicking it off and on again, praying the batteries weren't dying. It steadied, but the light was dimmer now. The tunnel ahead of me was pitch black, the walls closing in around me. I started walking faster. That's when the tapping stopped. The sudden silence was worse than the sound had been. My footsteps echoed louder now, each one a reminder of how alone I was in that suffocating darkness. But then, in the quiet, I heard something else, a soft rustling, like something moving in the tunnel behind me. I spun around, shining the flashlight back the way I'd come. The beam cut through the dark, but there was nothing there. "Hello," I called out, my voice bouncing back at me from the tunnel walls. No answer. I stood there for a few moments, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination. I was alone. I had to be. But the feeling of being watched was growing stronger. It pressed down on me, like invisible eyes in the dark. I couldn't shake it. I couldn't think straight. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I forced myself to turn back around and keep moving. As I neared the far end of the tunnel, the air grew colder, almost freezing. The smell of rot was stronger now, overpowering, like something dead had been left to decay for far too long. My flashlight flickered again, dimming further. I started running, the tunnel stretching ahead of me like a nightmare that wouldn't end. That's when I heard it, a voice, low and whispering, echoing through the tunnel. It wasn't my voice, and it wasn't an echo of my footsteps. It was someone or something behind me, speaking in a language I didn't understand. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. I ran faster, my breath coming in ragged gasps. But no matter how fast I went, the voice stayed with me, whispering, growing louder, until it was all I could hear. My heart pounded in my chest, my legs burning, but I couldn't stop. I had to get out the flashlight die. Complete darkness swallowed me. I stumbled, my hands scrambling along the cold, slick walls, trying to find my way. But the voice, it was everywhere now, surrounding me, closing in. And then, from the depths of the tunnel, I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Not mine, something was behind me, close. I broke into a full sprint, my hands outstretched, praying I'd reach the end. The footsteps behind me grew louder, faster, almost inhuman. I didn't dare look back. I could feel it, just behind me, gaining on me with every second. Suddenly, my foot hit something, and I went sprawling to the ground. Pain shot through my ankle, but I didn't stop. I scrambled to my feet, and that's when I saw it just ahead, the faint outline of the tunnel's exit. A sliver of light so far away but within reach. I ran toward it with everything I had left. As I neared the exit, the voice stopped. The footsteps stopped. There was only silence now, except for my own frantic breathing. I burst out of the tunnel and into the open air, collapsing on the ground, gasping for breath. The sun had almost set, casting long shadows across the overgrown field. I looked back at the tunnel's mouth, half expecting something to come crawling out after me, but there was nothing. I sat there for a long time, trying to calm down, telling myself it was over. It was just my mind playing tricks on me. The tunnel was old, dark, and creepy, that was all. But as I stood up, ready to walk away, I heard it again. That tapping, coming from deep inside the tunnel. And then, from the darkness, a voice whispered, "Come back." I never went near the tunnel again.